I'm a advocate for self growth, and I'm always trying to learn more and kind of grow myself as an individual. So I'm usually asking people who are more experienced than myself, what are their tips? How do they find success in podcasting and in streaming? And I hear a lot of the same tips from both sides of things, and that is on consistency. As struggling to get out of bed from being sick, and sometimes it doesn't feel like it's worth it, but I just know that the consistency helps, having an episode to go out on a regular basis.
What does success mean to you?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to Tom Meets Interesting People. This is the podcast where I meet everybody from voice actors to nuclear engineers to talk about their work, their projects, and their processes. And guess what? This is the first episode of season 2. And to celebrate, I brought a pop filter. Because over here at Tom Meets Interesting People, I know how to party. So if I do sound a little bit sniffly today, and if my guest also sounds just a little bit croaky today, we're both getting over something. I don't know what it is. In my reflection episode from 2 weeks ago, I said that I wanted to get to know more podcasters. And guess what we're kicking off season 2 with? So I've got with me Kevin, who is one half of the Gamer Parents podcast, alongside his wife Joanne, who isn't with us today. Something that I can attest from gaming with my own partner is that gaming with your spouse, your wife, your husband is the absolute best. Now their podcast includes discussions on games, as well as their reviews and critiques of the games they play on live stream. And they also rate each game that they play in 5 different categories that they know are important to gamer parents. Kevin, the warmest welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for having me on this week as well.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, I feel like I probably didn't do you justice in that intro. So tell us all about the Gamer Parents podcast. Tell us, why did you start it up?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of goes back to 2020 and COVID, and that being a very difficult year, and puts a lot of strain on people and their relationships and just the stress of the household. And at one point, my wife and I, Joanne, we kind of decided we wanted to do something together that was different from our work life, or just taking care of the kids, or what are we going to eat today. And we wanted to be able to talk about something different. And we around that same time, I had gotten into listening to some podcasts, and I kind of just threw out that idea of, hey, what if we were to go and start a podcast together? And she liked the idea, and we were both interested in gaming, so we're like, let's do a gaming podcast. And so ever since then, we've done that. And over the last 4 years, we've had 2 kids. So that's kind of been a struggle as well, of, getting them through everything and working on trying to fit this podcast in at the same time. So it's definitely been a challenge, but it's something that we do once the kids are asleep. So, we have a couple hours each night. We don't do much when the kids are around, because they're usually noisy. And plus, Joanne and I, we're both tied up with the podcast when we're working on it. So no one will be there to watch the kids. So yeah.
How do you find the time? I struggle with just this podcast, but you've got podcast, live streaming, your day jobs, and kids. How are you finding the time?
Yeah, I mean, it helps a lot that between Joanne and I, we can split it up. We split up a lot of the workload, right? I'm kind of more of the long time gamer. I've been gaming since I was a kid. I love the stuff. She's kind of here because she likes it and enjoys it too. But I'm more interested in the gaming news, or what new games are out, and what they're all about and everything. My wife's the more creative one, right? I don't have a creative cell in my body. She's the one who does a lot of the editing and creating logos and a good portion of the social media stuff. So that's all her. But we are able to manage it basically because we break it up into what we enjoy the best, right? Which are 2 very different things. We're 2 very different people, and that's probably for a very good reason. And that kind of helps us manage it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of successful teams that I've spoken to, and a lot of successful sort of entrepreneurs as well. I know this almost sounds like it's not related, but you can kind of bring it in. They do say that having those people who work on the areas that they're good at, work on the areas that they love, makes it 10 times easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I wouldn't be doing this if I couldn't be doing this with my wife,
Yeah.
right? Because I get out of it. That was really the whole reason it started, because we wanted to be able to spend more time together. We wanted to, I mean, we at least get a few hours a week where we kind of just get to sit down and talk about what we like, and it's usually, I mean, we throw stuff in there about the kids, but it's
Yeah.
stuff that we are all both passionate about and get to share it together. And I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way at this point.
Yeah, no, totally. I also remember talking about, because it's the same for me as well. I absolutely adore sort of gaming. I remember, I think this may have been in your first episode, because I have this weird thing where I like to go back and listen to people's first episodes because I'm sad and have no life. Um,
Well, props to you, because most people's first episodes are not very good, so you kind of get to see the worst of it here.
I mean, mine was with my little sibling, so it's not too bad. It went all right.
Okay.
We recorded it over Zoom on a headset. But something that I wanted to bring up immediately, because I was so happy when you said this, is your first game was also my first game, and that was Pokemon. And I think you played Pokemon Blue as well, didn't you?
I did. I think the first game I got was Pokemon Yellow, and Pokemon Blue came around that same time, as far as at least when I got it. And that was kind of one of the first games that I remember playing. I think there was a few of them before that, but none that really captured my love for gaming. And I grew up in the '90s, so I think I was like 8 or 9 years old when
Yeah.
like Pokemon first came to the US. And I'm not sure if it was around the same time frame for you, but Pokemon was huge. I remember in school, at recess, everyone would get in a circle and like show off their Pokemon cards that they got, and
Yeah.
trade and play with them and stuff. So it was just culturally, Pokemon was huge, and then that kind of came to gaming at the same time, and that was one of the first games that I really fell in love with.
I think I was about 4 or 5 when I got Pokemon Blue. And I remember as well, because I knew nothing about it as a 5-year-old, I blasted all the way through from Pallet Town all the way up to Pewter City. And then I remember having my first experience of how gaming can be really hard when you don't level up. Uh, and I couldn't beat Brock. I really couldn't. And I remember crying to my dad. I was like, Dad, this game is too hard. And he even offered to take it back to the shop for me, but they wouldn't accept it. But that was
Oh,
probably a
darn
good
it.
thing, because I ended up playing this playing this a lot more. But yeah, it was a massive cultural phenomenon back then, wasn't it? And it still is.
Yeah, it still is. And actually, just kind of recently, I mean, Pokemon was huge in my childhood, and then I kind of let it go as I kind of moved over to PlayStation and Xbox kind of
Yeah.
games, or PC, as I got a little bit older, and we just kind of recently went and got a Nintendo Switch, which is kind of where all of the Pokemon games are. So we actually just picked up another one of the most recent Pokemon games, and we're going to give it a try. I have no idea if I'm going to like it as much as I did in my childhood, or if it's something that is best left to 8-year-old me versus 30 or 31-year-old me. So, I don't know how it's going to click at this era, but we'll see. And also, my wife was never really into Pokemon, so I'd be like, hey, here's Pokemon, check it out.
Yeah. No, I reckon it'll probably be a good intro. I've got some friends who live down the road as well. We're the same generation, and they've got a Switch, and they've been playing Sword and Shield, and they've got raving reviews of that. So I think it's going to be a good one. So it'll be a good one to introduce Joanne to. I hope.
Yeah. I mean, I think she'll like it. Yeah, the same kind of thing. I hear really great reviews on those games, and I feel like every time I look at it and see it, Pokemon just feels more and more foreign to me versus
Yeah.
the Pokemon Blue and everything. I'm like, I don't know who any of these Pokemon are or characters, or everything just kind of feels very different now.
Yeah, this is going to turn into a Pokemon podcast, but you know what? I'm not complaining. Because it is, we started in Kanto, didn't we? And then we
Yeah.
sort of, so we remember that's like our region, but then we expand on the world. And it's like, now we're kind of in another country. Oh, it kind of almost feels like. But
Yeah.
that's something that's cool about it, isn't it? So what have you learned so far? What have you and Joanne learned so far in your journey of podcasting and in your journey of streaming?
They're both kind of related. I've picked up a lot of the same tips for both, and I'm a advocate for self growth, and I'm always trying to learn more and kind of grow myself as an individual. So I'm usually asking people who are more experienced than myself, what are their tips? How do they find success in podcasting and in streaming? And I hear a lot of the same tips from both sides of things, and that is on consistency. And that's something that I've strived for. I mean, even when we're as struggling to get out of bed from being sick, or planning on to go out of town on vacation, and not having the time to work on the podcast, we find ways to still get an episode out each week. And sometimes that can be difficult, and sometimes it doesn't feel like it's worth it. But I just know that the consistency helps, having an episode to go out on a regular basis. So for people who are listening, they know they can kind of plan to come back to the same day every week and get some sort of content.
Yeah. And forgive the plug on my end. Tuesdays, 7 a.m. UK time, new episode of Tom Meets Interesting People will release consistently. I hope.
Yeah, that's usually the plan. And obviously sometimes uncontrollable things come up. And I think we've missed one episode in the last year since we started, which we're proud of, and we try to keep it going the best that we can.
I mean, missing one out of a year, that's epic. Like, you could be forgiven for missing one or two episodes. I mean, you are raising 2 kids after all, aren't you?
Yeah, it was when we had just started. It was one of our first episodes, and we were out of town, and we were like, we don't really know how to do this ahead of time, or we didn't really know a lot. We were very inefficient, so it was harder to plan something ahead of release and do it all then. But we've figured out our process a lot better since then, and haven't missed one, thankfully.
I'm also interested in something that you mentioned there. You gave a great piece of advice where you said you're asking people about success and how did they find success. Well, I've got a little bit of a twist on the question for you. What does success mean to you?
To me, I mean, I think one of my faults is I pay attention to the numbers a lot. And I don't know if you're the same way, but with your podcast platform, you're able to see how many, downloads and views and all that stuff. And I have a habit of using that as a measure of success, which shouldn't really always be the case, because I know that I can be a little bit obsessive when it comes to, I'll look multiple times a day, be like, okay, how many downloads do we have today? Are we hitting our goals and all that? And as we do have goals around those numbers that we have set up, it's, I do feel like it's a little bit unhealthy for how much I watch it, instead of just getting out there and doing it because I love it, and then the numbers will come behind it.
Yeah, no, totally. I think for at least the first 5 or 6 episodes, I was watching the numbers, and I'm trying not to now. And now you mentioned the numbers, I am resisting the urge to go onto my own platform and just be like, what's my current downloads? What are they right now?
Yeah, it's definitely a boost to, self-esteem, confidence when, you see growth, and, your channel or podcast is doing well or improving. So it's a little bit addicting.
Yeah, no, it totally is. It's almost like a drug. Like, you just have to watch it. But from what I see from what you've produced, and from what I see on your live streams, what I see on the podcast itself, is you are already that definition of success, because you have been releasing things consistently. You've been keeping things going, and you've not had well, it doesn't sound like it. You've not had an argument over the podcast yet.
Not while we're recording. We're a lot nicer to each other once we hit the record button. It's kind of like social media, right? You don't put anything bad. You don't put the pictures of the kids throwing tantrums and stuff like that. It's all the happy family photos that everybody gets to see. So same thing on our podcast episodes. But I mean, for the most part, it's a good thing for us.
Yeah, no, totally. I know that's going to happen if I bring the other half into this. So I'm kind of also interested in the way that you approach the content that you're producing, and in particular, the way that you approach the games. And you do something that I've not seen any other podcast do, and that's you rate each game in 5 different categories.
That's correct.
which is important to yourselves as gamer parents. So can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah. So I guess as far as what drives, how we do things on the podcast and the reasons why, like I had mentioned, I was into podcasting, into listening to podcasts beforehand, and I listened to a few that I really liked. And part of what we do is modeled a little bit off of different portions of other podcasts that I listen to, because I liked so much what they're doing, and I wanted to be a part of that podcast so much. I was like, I'll go ahead and kind of create my own and take different pieces of ones that I like and try to make something unique out of it. And one thing that we do, every 2 weeks, we basically go through a new game that new to us at least, and Joanne and I will play through it. Usually, this is something that we can play together, co-op or multiplayer, so that we're usually on the same team, kind of working together, because that also drives communication for us, which that's important, right? We're not in here to put on our headsets and play different games and not talk to each other, right? We're in here to play together and build upon that. And then every other episode, because we do a weekly podcast release, we talk about that said game and kind of give our review on it. And part of that review comes with 5 different categories that we talk through. And basically, before we started all this, we were like, what's most important to us in a game? And a lot of it was, and that's changed over the years. A lot of it is new to us because we're parents. Our oldest is only 4 years old, so we haven't been parents for too terribly long, but that's changed a lot since we have been parents. Different things are more important to us. And those 5 categories, the first one that we talk about is the convenience of the game. Especially with people with newborns, and even older than that, kids don't always sleep well at night. Newborns are up all the time, and if we wanted to game after the kids go to sleep, you need to be open to the possibility that your kids are probably going to wake up while you're in here. So if there's a game where you're going to be stuck and tied to it for, an hour at a time, and lose all your progress if you leave the room or something like that, that's not a great game for us, right? And that's very low on the convenience scale for us. And that's why that category is important. The next one that we go through is on communication. It's kind of what I hinted at before, communication between the two of us. We want there to be that. Otherwise, it's like, why are we doing this? It's fun, but we could both be doing something else. So we want to make sure we're talking and communicating. And not only is it communication during the gameplay, but also, the next day we'll be like, oh my gosh, remember that time when you did this and this happened, and this led to this, and we'll talk about the games that we're playing too, like throughout the week. And that's fun because it's not the usual stuff that we're talking about, and it changes every week because it's always a different game. And then we also talk about the story of the game, which for a lot of people like a good story. So my wife's very much into books and reading, and she loves like a nice juicy story. So we have that one in there as well that we'll talk about. And then the fourth category is repeatability, and that is how easy is it to come back to the game, right? Is it a game that you could play for a day or two and then you're kind of move past it, or is it one that we feel like we could play for weeks or months on end? And then last category is it's an easier one. It's just fun, and it's just how much fun do we feel like we're having when we're playing the game. That one's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And in each category we rate out of 10. So it's 5 categories, 1 through 10. So it's a total of 50 points for the perfect game, which we have never found. So if anyone out there knows the perfect game, 50 out of 50, let us know. We'll play it.
Yep. I'm already just mentally because I'm between 2 games. I'm between Persona 5 and Elden Ring, and I'm mentally just going through each of them now. And I'm like, convenience of the game for Elden Ring. 1, you cannot pause that.
Ooh, yeah. Any game that you cannot pause is difficult. Especially like usually for us, if a kid wakes up, just one of us goes. So the other, if we're playing together, the other person can hold down the fort, I guess. If we can't pause it, but games we can pause are really good for convenience for us.
So we've got your 5 categories are convenience of the game, communication between the two of yourselves, the story, repeatability, and more importantly, how much fun you're both having.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, epic. So, what are you currently playing right now?
So right now, it's actually a new game that was released, I think, about a week ago. It's called Gunfire Reborn. It's not a huge title. It's not a big name out there. One thing that is kind of a staple of what drives what games we pick is I don't know if you're familiar with Xbox Game Pass.
Yes, yes,
Yes, but
yes.
it's a subscription service. It's basically like a Netflix of video games,
Yeah.
where they're constantly adding new games, and as long as you're a monthly subscriber, you can download those games and play them as much as you want and however many games you want. And so, since we go through a new game every 2 weeks, it could be rather expensive if we were buying 2 copies of the game,
Yeah.
every 2 weeks. So we kind of opt for the Game Pass route, and we, for the most part, most of the games we pick through there. We're also looking for good bargain deals on other platforms like Steam or Epic, but we kind of look for games that aren't going to break the bank as well.
Yeah.
And so this was one that was on Xbox Game Pass. That it was released a week or two ago. It's called Gunfire Reborn. It is what's called a roguelike, and it's kind of a first person shooter. It's very kind of, the art style is very cartoony. It's you go through kind of these dungeons, and you could play with up to 4 people, which is great because that means Joanne and I can play together. And you pick up different weapons, mostly guns and rocket launchers and snipers and all kinds of stuff, and you try to go through each level, and every so often there's a boss, which are incredibly challenging. We actually just last night beat the first boss for the first time after many attempts. So, but it's that just makes it that much more rewarding.
I am the biggest fan of Game Pass. I really am. It's funny because I brought Persona 5 on PS4 like 2 years ago when COVID hit, or maybe a little bit after that. I can't remember. And Persona 5 rather, and it never played. I never played it. Straight on Game Pass, the millisecond it's there, I put it up. I'm playing it as well. No Man's Sky I found was great as well for playing with my other half. You do have the slight disadvantage of, because you're sharing the world with other players, everything is happening, but you can get like
Right.
kind of the private world, so you can't really pause No Man's Sky, which again, pausability I think is a big thing for you guys.
Yeah, it sure is. And No Man's Sky is one of the games that we did review as well, a little while back. And it was a really interesting game. It was probably a little bit too slow, which is another. We don't really have a category for that per se, but it's one thing that I think about with games, because sometimes it's like, all right, I have 2 hours at night, and I want to be able to feel like we're accomplishing something, with each session versus, before kids, we were able to game for a lot longer at a time and get a lot more hours in throughout the week. So that's kind of just how we felt about No Man's Sky, but still a really impressive game that they've come out with that one.
Yeah, and so much better from when it launched as well. Like,
that's what I've heard. Yeah,
launch was horrendous. But yeah, no, honestly, I'm on. I think update version 4 hasn't come out yet, but 3.9 is currently a thing, and it is just amazing. But yeah, oh my god, it can be a slow game sometimes.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes slow, but sometimes things will happen out of nowhere, and you'll be hyper speeding through space and get attacked by space pirates all of a sudden. So stuff does happen. A lot of it's kind of out of your control. It just kind of seemed like for us to be able to go places together between Joanne and I, it would take some time, but it was super fun to get in and to just experiment with all the different things you can do in No Man's Sky.
Kevin, thank you so much for your time today and taking the time to talk with me. Before we go to our questionnaire, can you tell us where we can find all of your social media, where we can find your podcast, where we find your live streams?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess first over on the YouTube channel, which is the Gamer Parents Podcast, where we have our podcast episodes we upload there for anybody who prefers to listen over YouTube. We also have our weekly live streams, which is every Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and that is over on the YouTube channel as well. You can also check out any past streams of any of the games that we've played and rated. Those are all on there. Of course, I'm pretty active on Twitter, and that's kind of where we found each other as well, Tom. But at twitter.com/gamerparentspod. And then we're also over on Instagram, which is the one that my wife manages, and there's completely different stuff over there.
Yeah.
Between what I put out and talk about and what she does is completely different. Like, she likes to bake World of Warcraft food. So even if you're not really into World of Warcraft, there's a lot of really cool dishes and stuff that she puts together and puts pictures of on there. But our Instagram is at gamer_parents_podcast. And then, of course, we're on every podcast platform pretty much like everybody else.
I end every episode with the questionnaire. They come from the Proust Questionnaire, which were then adapted by Bernard Pivot and later by James Lipton. Now I present my Gotta Catch 'em All adaptation to you. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word? For a long time, I've always said my favorite word is genuine. For, I guess, a few reasons. One, because I like genuine people. I try to be genuine myself. And I also just like the way it sounds. Genuine, it's different. I feel like it has a little twist on it. It's a fun word for me.
It's bouncy, isn't it?
It's a little bit fancy. Yeah, I feel like you got to have your pinky out, when you say it. So
they're the best words. They're the absolute best words. What is your least favorite word?
Probably failure. I mean, I that's one thing that I don't like failure, as most people probably don't, and I kind of feel like I do a lot to make sure that that never happens, and I don't like hearing about failure or feeling like I have failed.
What engages you?
What engages me? I think between podcasting and streaming and my career, a lot of it comes down to challenges. I like being challenged. I've had easy jobs in the past, and those I find boring and unmotivating.
Yeah.
Whereas if you could pay me the same amount and give me a way harder job, and I would enjoy it more because I like the challenge. I like the thrill. I like feeling like I'm making an impact.
That's fair. This isn't one of the questionnaire questions, but what would you say is the biggest challenge you've faced? Let's call it this year. Biggest challenge this year.
So far, it's probably been the stream. And I think we've found more success in the podcast area than we have in the streaming so far. I'm still struggling with ways to grow that portion of it. It's not kind of where we would have liked it to have been. And so I think that's something that we're struggling with a little bit. I think I have a little bit more resources when it comes to the podcasting side of things than when it does to the streaming. But it's something that I've always been interested in, and I want to stick with it, absolutely. And I think obviously the longer you stick with it, you're going to grow as long as you keep putting your best foot forward and keep trying it. And that's kind of just where we face the most difficulties so far.
Yeah. Remind us where your live streams are.
The live streams are over on the YouTube channel, Gamer Parents Podcast.
All right, everyone. So you heard the man. Off you go. Keep this playing in the background because we've still got more questions. But go check out those live streams. Question number 4. What disengages you?
What disengages me? That's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to avoid saying the opposite of what engages me, right? Or the absence of a challenge, mostly. But I feel like for me, it's dangerous when I get inactive. I feel like when I'm just not staying busy or doing something, then I kind of get down and I don't feel like engaging with anything. So, I mean, even if I have nothing to do with the podcast or work or anything, I try to at least get out and, I don't know, go run an errand or groceries or something rather than kind of just sitting around. I feel like it gets me in a worse headspace, and it's usually not good for anyone. But especially I've noticed that for me, at least, that's kind of what disengages me.
Yeah, you can't stay still, can you?
Yeah,
we're going to become best friends after this. What sound or noise do you love?
It's got to be something in gaming. I feel like there's a lot of sounds that, I mean, even to this day, like I still know exactly what it sounds like to start up a PlayStation 2, right?
Yes.
Or even a GameCube or any of the consoles that I've had in the past, like that sound when it starts up, like I know exactly what it sounds like, even though I haven't heard it in, I don't know, at least 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with game soundtracks of, games that have just been such a staple in our past. So as far as probably my favorite, it's probably the PlayStation startup sound.
Yeah. Yep, totally with you there as well. Adding to that, the PlayStation 1 startup and the Game Boy startup,
Hmm.
and Game Boy Advance as well. It had that little ding on it, like as the letters bounced. Oh my
Yeah.
god, you made me so happy.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about it. It's just that chime. They all have that, and it gets ingrained in you, and I think you correlate that with the experience that you have with with gaming, and even though it's just a sound,
What sound or noise do you hate?
I think the last few years it's probably been babies crying.
Yeah,
We've had two of
yeah,
them, and it's something that I don't know what it is. Especially our youngest, our daughter, she has a great set of lungs, and she can scream extremely loud. And it, before I was a parent, like I was never really around kids. I'm not used to. I'm the youngest in my family. Like I'm not used to little ones or babies crying and that kind of stuff. Especially whatever it is about being in a car with one too,
yeah.
and it's just like you want to get wherever you're going as fast as possible so that you can get them out of the car seat and stop the crying. That's one that's just it drives you crazy. They're lucky they're so cute.
I was once on the flight with one going to
Yeah.
Greece. It was a long 2.5 hours.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Now, this next question is everyone's favorite, but I do have to take a little bit of responsibility here. Are the kids within earshot?
No, one of them is out of town with his grandparents, and then the other one is on the other side of the house.
Okay, brilliant. I can ask this question in safety then. What is your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word. I I mean, I don't curse. Um, I I don't know why. I mean, I kind of grew up in a household and that wasn't really common, and even some of my friends obviously did, but
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't really engaged in much of that at all.
fair enough, fair enough. I'm not gonna push. I'm not gonna push. Um, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
As I grew up, I dreamed about game development.
Yeah,
And although just being interested in gaming, like I wanted to be a part of developing or creating a game that, society would hopefully come to enjoy or play and be fans of, and I felt like at various points I had great ideas for games, as I'm sure a lot of people feel like they do.
yeah,
That I tried to get into some developer companies, a long time ago, and obviously that never really worked out, but probably for the better because I'm well off now and I get to stream playing games instead.
yeah. Which is less stressful, I think, than actually developing a game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super stress free, kind of just getting to. I mean, I get to play games and with my wife, and we get to talk to people who are in our chat, and we get to do what we love and talk about what we love.
What profession would you not like to do?
Any kind of public speaker. I know that kind of sounds weird because I'm also the host of a podcast,
Yeah,
but for the vast majority of my life, and even now, I would still consider myself an introvert. And it got to a point where it was really bad in college, and I had an extremely difficult time making friends. And I went out of state, far from home, to go to school, and I absolutely hated it. I wasn't making friends. I fell into a little bit of depression. I eventually ended up kind of quitting school there and switching to a different school a lot closer to home where I
yeah,
was a lot happier. But throughout that, I got to a point where I decided I didn't like how I was, how shy, nervous, anxious I was about everything. So I told myself that I would make attempts to try to grow. And I'll talk about growth again, right? Of how to get myself to a better version of me, or a version of me that I think I would be happier with, or that I
yeah,
would like to see come out of me. And a part of that is pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And I've done various things over the years, and I think this podcast is a great example of that, of a way that the idea of it beforehand, it kind of terrified me, but I was like, I want to be comfortable with this because I feel like it's going to make me better at socializing, better at making friends, better at carrying on conversations and so forth.
Final question of the questionnaire. If you could say only one statement to any one person, what would that statement be, and who would that person be?
I've seen a lot on Twitter lately about people who are down or depressed, and I'm relatively new to Twitter. I've really only been on there for the last, I don't know, 4 months or so, but
Yeah.
it's kind of eye opening on the kind of stuff that comes out of that. But I see a lot of people who are struggling with things on either giving up on life or their what they love or their hobbies or everything that they're passionate about because they're down or depressed. And I hate seeing that because we all have people who are close to us or ourselves who are struggling with things like that. So I would just tell that person to not to give up, to keep pushing forward. Things will get better. There is light at the end of the tunnel and all of that.
Yeah. I think that's really wise advice for anyone listening to this, and I hope also that inspires you all to go check out the Gamer Parents podcast. Again, remind us, where's all your content?
Yeah, so on YouTube, Gamer Parents Podcast, and then Twitter at Gamer Parents Pod, and then Instagram at gamer_parents_podcast. We also have a Discord channel. It's probably the best place for people to come and say hi and check out what we're doing. That's kind of where we're usually in a voice chat there every night for the most part, so people can kind of hop in and say hi. And if and we invite people to play games with us all the time. So if you're a gamer and you're playing any of the same games we are, we definitely enjoy having people pop in there as well.
Epic. Yeah, I literally live a second life on Discord.
Discord is amazing. It's in so many ways. Yeah.
And of course, you can find our podcast as well wherever you get your podcasts, but particularly on Good Pods, where we're currently in the top 100 indie documentary chart. And if you want to get in touch with me, I haven't yet set up a Discord, but I kind of want to. I'm on TikTok at Meets Interesting People, Instagram at Tom_meets_interesting_people, and Twitter at Tom Meets People. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me. I really, really appreciate this.
Tom, thank you so much for having me and giving me the chance to talk about what I do over here and what I love and what drives me. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of get on here and share that with people. And I love it too. I enjoy talking about this stuff. So
yeah,
thank you.
I'm grateful we can meet as well. So I'm super happy with that. So everybody, have the greatest day, and I shall see you all again next week. You have just listened to an episode of Tom Meets Interesting People. If you'd enjoyed the show and would like to take part, or you know somebody who would make a great guest, please email me at tommeetsinterestingpeople@gmail.com and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Guests may provide audio content that helps to demonstrate their work. Guests have given permission for this work to be played through the use of a release form that they have signed. It is the understanding of this podcast that the material that they provide does not infringe on the copyright of others. All other rights reserved. Copyright 2022.